European player, despite the fact that he plays so weirdly, despite taking breaks here and there. He comes off of a longer break this time around and performing like as good as he ever has. So it's kind of wild. He's my spirit animal. I love watching him play, but his opponent here is going to be definitely a tall order for him. In the top left hand side, it is for Team Liquid, SKillous.
And down in the bottom right-hand side of the map, we have our blue Zerg player. He is Bly. A man who I like to think throws both chaos and strategy back into StarCraft when sometimes it feels like players have just mapped out too much of the game. Bly says, let's take a left a little bit earlier on in the game and go down the road less traveled.
This is so cool. Actually, he cancels the hatchery, so he gets a lot of the investment back, blocks the Nexus effectively still, but manages to throw his hatchery on his side of the map at the same time as a result, right? So a little bit of investment here for Bly, but it's gonna pay off. It's gonna be pretty good. And SKillous not really reacting like he would to a hatchery where you might pull some probes to make sure it doesn't go up. He identifies that this is just, you know, a temporary block that it's gonna start dying on its own. But I don't know how much I like not reacting to this, much less not making a sellout. That's kind of insane, actually. I really like this position for Bly already.
Oh wow, he's gonna just take the third base instead of the natural. I mean, this I think is pretty wild to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me check SKillous' vision here. He knows when the gas went up as well. So if he knew that this was like gasless or something like that, this would be a lot more justified. But taking the third, I mean, it's going to be exposed. He still has to wall off at his natural at some point. So I wouldn't mind Bly going for some aggression. This is going to be definitely an uncomfortable, weird position for SKillous. And this is what Bly does best, right? Like he has played this position more than any other player would have. So he is probably well aware of what the options are. I'm sure this is not the first time that Bly has had to react against a third placed on the other side as a result of a Evo Chamber block. Whereas for SKillous, it's probably new grounds. So all of a sudden, a game that going into it, we would have to favor SKillous greatly. Not so much anymore.
This is fascinating to me. And what's also interesting is because of the third base location, SKillous can't even just do what I feel like some Protoss players do against Bly, which is consider even going for a full wall off on the 2 base, because that's just kind of what Bly is known for, is the early game aggression. And you can usually knock down something and open up a pathway to try and get over to your third base when you really need to. But now even just 2 lings causing sorts of havoc and problems, as 1 worker already going down, lost mining time for 5 or 6 workers, because these are workers that had to transfer all the way from the main base. Does end up killing both of the lings at least, but loses 2 workers in the process.
Yeah, that's not ideal. And now the Adepts are going to have to contend with link speed soon, but it's not there yet. So a couple of links will have to bleed out. The Shades are already good for SKillous, and the fact that Bly is willing to be out on the map should give him a hint as to retreat, and that's exactly what he will do. Oracle now on the way. It's ready to pop out. The Evo Chamber has not yet died, and the links are positioning themselves nicely out on the map where they might catch this Adept, but they're already pre-shaded.
Yeah, and funny enough, I think the Adepts also were catching the links for a bit, but now they get appreciated, like you said, back into a very, very nice choke point wall in. Love this kind of setup over here. I think there is still an opening behind the mineral line, but that isn't going to be where Bly is looking for his opportunity to get damage done. And said he finds the Adept at the wall and goes after the gateway, which he does have a lot of surface area on now, but Oracle is going to be able to force those links back. The Adepts even joining the fray, which maybe means that the mineral line's open, but is it really open when there's a shield battery there, Cats?
No, probably not. 2 workers went down on the other side of the map as well. The Evo Chamber actually is micro to target the gateway that had already been worked on. And you're completely right. There was a lot of surface area that Bly wasn't even using the full surface area of the wall off. He just kind of seemed to have assumed that that was a normal full wall off and just clicked it preemptively. We'll catch an Adept here, but yeah, not much more than that. And Bly stops paying attention to his links, so they're all gonna die here without finding much else. That is a little bit unfortunate. Those are units that he's gonna have to remake. Yeah,
and this style from Bly is dependent on getting damage done. You don't just make this many lings this early on and hope to find minor bits of damage of maybe 2 or 3 Adepts picked off. You are looking for a lot more than that, and it's kind of reflected in the worker count. He's on 43 workers right now. As the Protoss player is getting oracles in to kill off even more of those workers, Bly isn't making more workers right now either. Well, he does start up 5 drones finally now, but it's just a very awkward situation. And I guess finally catching a bit of a break by picking off one of the oracles, but it's actually 3 on the map now.
Yeah, there used to be 4, which is a very odd number to have. Now Bly is going to find one of the adepts, maybe a stalker as well. The oracles hesitant to turn on pulsar beams until now. So maybe just a little bit of a misread or not paying attention there from SKillous will cost him an extra unit or so, but not the end of the world for him. And Bly did find some damage with his links, right? Like he did force the extra shield batteries both at the 3rd and the natural, killed a couple of adepts here and there. It could have been better. He didn't need to lose like 5 or 6 links towards the tail end of the aggression, but he's definitely not out of the game by any means.
Yeah, still going to have an opportunity to try his next sort of wave of things as the drop overlord did finish on up. So I am assuming that this is going to be a queen drop, but no, actually, as I say that, I click on the drop overlord and it's a drop overlord with Lings heading over to the main base right now as it is about to land. And this is definitely a nice way to catch your opponent a bit out of position with the oracles on the other side of the map.
Yeah, unfortunately for Bly, there's going to be a pylon that spots him there, and that means warpins for SKillous, but Bly very smartly follows the probes instead into the natural, or he'll find 2 or 3. On the other side, the Stasis Ward does a good job of minimizing the link damage that can come out of Bly, and that means the rest of the links are going to struggle to find surface area onto the Stalkers. The Queens are now getting involved, but they don't really have energy for Transfuse just yet. They almost do, but this hatchery is in a lot of trouble. It looks like it's going to fall.
Yeah, Creep Spirit is there, so he can transfuse it, but that transfuse is not going to be enough. One of the Stalkers is going to go down over here, but now the Queens are out of range of the Stalkers, so can't really help in the DPS, and that means that the rest of the Lings really don't stand much of a chance. Losing that 4th base is brutal for Bly here. He was already not in a great economic spot. Now he's in a really terrible one.
Yeah, absolutely. 55 workers to the 62 of SKillous. You were mentioning Miomaika before, and it looks like Bly is going to try to take a page out of his book and just really lean heavily on the Hydras. But as I say that, he starts droning up again. And, you know, like a lot of these Hydra attacks, especially with the buffs that they received as far as like them being able to complete their upgrades later and whatnot, are pretty strong for timings, but this is not it. All of them are going to be caught in the middle of the map. Blink is available as well for SKillous, so he should be able to chase. That's why Bly is not retreating. It's kind of pointless, so he's just looking for as much damage as he can find, but these are not cheap units to bleed out, and actually reinforcing Hydras have no business being here. SKillous will catch a glimpse of them and will promptly blink onto to punish.
This is, as you said, not the play for Bly, and this very well could just escalate and snowball from here into a death for Bly, because SKillous just has way too many units on Bly's side of the map. 17 Stalkers to 9 Hydras and 2 Queens. That's the whole standing army right now for Bly. And I don't think the reinforcing units are going to be enough either to hold off against this number of units. Much less reinforcements.
Yeah, no chance. And yeah, it looks like SKillous is going to take game 1 here. Bly already has a lurker then on the way, so that was kind of the Hail Mary play that he was going for. That was the transition that he was looking after. With Lynx here, he might actually be able to barely hold, but he's already bled way too much. 24 workers have fallen, half the supply now for Bly, as he is forced to tap out. And the expected victor with a clean game and victory in game number 1.
Yeah, but I want to go back to the interesting decision making, I guess, that happened in the early stages, where the Evo Chamber block got SKillous to go for a 3rd base location natural instead of, you know, the normal natural that you would go for. And that really did feel like a risky move against Bly. And I found it so interesting that Bly didn't just see that and double down or pounce on it. I wonder if it's something that he's maybe had a history against SKillous specifically, or just in general had a history where that maybe is like a bait, where somehow that's something that the Protoss player just says, ah, yes, I will take this very exposed base, and then they double down and defend it or over defend it, and Bly has found that it's best not to commit to it. I'm so curious what was going on in Bly's head during that moment.
Yeah, I mean, SKillous was accounting for things like roaches to some degree. With that Stargate opening, he even went up to like the 4 Oracle, so he was super safe up until Bly could get something like, you know, a Queen drop at least, or Hydras out on the map, which is what he opted to do. But for the Lynx, I mean, SKillous' defense was very, very well set up, right? Like he had a pylon on either side of the Nexus to create a chokehold and a shield battery that covered both adepts at the third. Bly still managed to find like a little bit of an opening at the natural where maybe he could have picked off the gateway with a little bit better focus firing on the surround of it. He managed to pick off an adept there, so he was definitely looking for those opportunities, just didn't lean in heavily onto an all-in, but still leaned in to punish that position with aggression. It was just very well executed from SKillous, and I'm not sure how this map gets through against Bly, but if he's my spirit animal, I hope to see Proxy Swarm hosts of the gold.
This is a fascinating map to see. I'm not going to complain about it though, Cats. I'm excited to see what happens.
I absolutely love this map.
The man who normally you would have expected to veto this map against, especially his opponent, it is the player in the top right-hand side of the map, the red Protoss, SKillous from Team Liquid.
And in the bottom left-hand side, the man who, if he is my spirit animal, he will make use of the gold in some way, shape, or form. It's a very strong gold. It's an issue of which gold it is, his or his opponent's. Is Bly.
Bly is an interesting one too, because he could make use of those golds, but his standard opening is sending a drone across the map and blocking the hatch or blocking the Nexus. So when would you want to see the gold even get used?
I mean, I would have liked for the second or third hatchery to be it, but instead Bly is just gonna go for a normal hatchery and you know, the Evo Chamber block that he did last game as well. So he likes this opening quite clearly. He does get away with it. And I like it too. I mean, it looks good, but now SKillous has an easier base to take, even if he wants to take just his tucked in potential third base. He is going to have to mine it. It's not 5 minerals that are there, but like, I think 10 or 15 per patch. So it's going to be a little bit of a choo-choo train from his main, but manages to get it down regardless. And now you can defend in one single location if your SKillous at the front of the ramp that is very difficult to breach, and you already have that base established. So, you know, easier than on the last map, though a little bit more costly to take his expansion.
Yeah, I guess that is actually a really nice advantage of playing this particular map against Bly. Although Bly is also the kind of player that I would not entirely throw out the possibility that he does something absurd, like knocking down those rocks and somehow mining out those minerals at the third base location. But that is a lot of effort, and you likely can at least see that coming, or, you know, prepare with, say, 4 oracles that could help push that kind of stuff back. So yeah, you know, this map choice is making a little bit more sense to me, I feel like, for SKillous.
Yeah, for sure, because from some perspective, I suppose you have the 3 bases that are very easy to secure against Bly. And usually, you know, if you're a top Protoss player and you're going up against Bly, if you set up on 3 bases, that's oftentimes enough, right? And this is very tight, easy 3 bases to defend once you get them. So from that perspective, I get it. I think that still the gold could have been a little bit more abused from Bly, and he's the type of player that I would have thought went for it, but he hasn't yet. So yeah, we'll see what he has in store, because at this point, this is now a very defensive map for SKillous. So things have, you know, the script is flipped to some degree.
No, I think that's entirely fair. Well, Stargate is still going to be a very, very solid, safe opening choice for all the reasons we were talking about before. Even going to go for a Void Ray rather than Oracle. So it's going to have consistent damage output, is going to be able to pick away at, say, the Overlord over here. Interestingly enough, it's still not fully walled in or even gotten close to completing that wall in, but only 2 Lings really going to be coming out. So he does not actually have to worry that much about things.
Yeah, great scouting from SKillous as well. If we look all around, he has scouted for proxies. He has scouted the likely gold that Bly would have taken. So he's just kind of on top of everything that Bly could have been doing up until this point. Very good scouting and very good keeping on top of whatever his opponent can do. And there's the Void that you were talking about. That's going to secure things further for SKillous, who is now moving into the Oracles. The Evo Chamber is still there. Just don't mind it.
It takes a while to die, but the Void Ray finally helps it out a little bit. And, well, those Broodlings are not going to be able to get too much done, but Shield Battery is going to come up behind this. So SKillous has a very, very solid defensive position on those 3 bases we were talking about. Spore Crawler is going to get started up there for Bly to help deal with the potential of those oracles getting some damage across the map. But like, what is the big game plan here for Bly? Because that is always going to be the question on my mind.
It's so tough, right? Because there's a Void Ray out. Like, I would have loved to see Swarm Host on this map, because then you have the very nice area behind both bases where you can attack with locusts, and it's very difficult to get around for the Protoss player. But with SKillous having open Void Ray and whatnot, it's very difficult to get out with the Swarm Hosts. You would need a pretty decent number of queens. And if we look at the economic situation right now, okay, it is a Nidus and it is an infestation pit. So that is exactly what we're gonna see, is Nidus Queen Swarm Hosts, but it gets spotted. And it was late as well. I mean, the lair has been done for a while, so yeah, it's not the cleanest execution either on the side of Bly. And economically speaking, he is in dire straits. He has to find a lot of damage with this, but Swarm Hosts are kind of a weird economic investment. They kind of act as an extra resource if you can start turning the tides and start doing damage and start snowballing with them. So that's what it has to be at this point.
Yeah, valuable for SKillous that he was able to keep the Oracle alive, as well as he immediately spots out the position of the Nidus Worm. That's actually extremely helpful. Oracle can even whittle away at the Nidus Worm, so even if those units could unload in time, you really don't want to unload, because then your units are just trapped there. So Stalkers finish that off. Another Nidus Worm goes up in a slightly more hidden away spot, so I like that position, but still, this is a tough ask right now for Bly.
Yeah, and it's not as good as a position, right? On the other position, you have access to both the natural and the third base, with the natural exposed mineral-wise, like the probes would be facing the Swarm Host, where he's trying the Nidus right now. I think that's the better location. But if this can't go up and there's a Void Ray already on top of it, it's just, yeah,
it's gonna
start becoming impossible for Bly, right? Like, it's all about that timing. It's all about that starting that snowball as early as possible. And SKillous is now well on top of it. So Bly just wants a Nidus anywhere at this point. And yeah, SKillous has been too good of a player to allow it anywhere close to him, and even a little bit further away, he'll spot it too.
Yeah, this is actually just a little bit brutal to watch right now. This is truly just a dire straits here for Bly. A lot of people will say, if you can shut down the first 2 Nidus Worms, that's kind of the magical point. SKillous has shut down the first 4 Nidus Worms, and he's even counterattacking across the map with Stalkers and supply blocking Bly during this. I don't even know if this is necessary, but he's gonna be able to do that and still kind of find the Swarm Host and pick off the Nidus Worm. This is rough.
Absolutely rough. And I love the move from SKillous right on the other side. Look at how effective this Swarm Host can be from the back of this mineral line, and this is why I was thinking, just take that gold first and go do this strategy from the get-go. Like it's, you know, I've tried stuff like that and it's been pretty good, but you know, it's pretty difficult to pull off, but not any more difficult than pulling off the Nidus at this stage either. So yeah, it's just tough. I like that the Stalkers walked across the map, because if you don't have enough units in the Lynx and Queens to defend, then you would have to use the Swarm Host defensively, which is the last thing you want. Like you were saying, like shutting down the first couple of Niduses is huge, because the Swarm Hosts really rely on piling on that value over time, right? They're a resource that you invested into, and they need to continuously do damage to kind of pay for themselves. And at this point, to put it in some perspective, like Bly started with 8 Swarm Hosts, you could have had like 4 waves of Locusts and load onto the natural and the third base of SKillous. Instead, you've had half a wave so far.
Yeah, half a wave, and 7 Nidus Worms, soon to be 8 Nidus Worms have died. 2 Swarmos also dying over there. That's actually a bit unfortunate as well.
Yeah, that's a great point, because the Niduses aren't inexpensive either, right? They're an investment. Each time you throw it down, it's a hefty bit of minerals and gas.
Wow, there's 4 Oracles and a Void Ray that are all just moving around alongside these Stalkers to try and spot out Nidus Worms. That is a very far back Nidus Worm, but actually that one may be able to get something done, especially since SKillous seems like he's done with playing whack-a-mole on Nidus Worms and says, all right, look, I think I can just kill you. And I don't think he's wrong, Cats. I really don't think he's wrong.
Very unlikely he's wrong. Bly does find a position for potentially picking off the third base finally of SKillous, so this should be the first successful Locust wave, but at what cost is going to be the question. Goes after, actually not being microed here, now goes after the battery before it can overcharge, but now here are the Oracles, who do a great job against Locust, so he will not settle for the Nexus. Instead, 16 probes, which is nothing to scoff at, but can he hold on the other side?
Yep. And if these stalkers get all the way up to the main base, let's just say somehow Bly manages to keep his hatcheries alive, SKillous could actually just go toward the main base and eventually kill off the Nice Worm. And like it's all over. There's no base trading or anything in that situation. But surprisingly enough, there are a lot of Lings and a handful of these Roaches out that are not necessarily trading super well, but they are buying himself a lot of time. And that time is giving him more opportunities to get a more Swarm Hosts and more Locust Waves that potentially now go kill the third base, or potentially now go do a bit more damage with the Oracles actually getting on the offensive as well.
Yeah, beautiful blink forward from SKillous here, though. Anticipating or expecting that those X won't be done anytime soon. The Ravagers are probably the best way to hold the choke. So once you're already past that choke, if you're SKillous, it's going to be easy pickings here. The bios are going to land big time, actually, onto a lot of the Stalkers, but it's not going to be enough. Bly is going to have to tap out. And yeah, beautifully played from SKillous. Really a little bit of a smashing, to be completely fair.
Yeah, as we were saying, it's a bit painful when you watch a Zerg player who's going for the Swarm Host Nidus play and their first 8 Nidus Worms die with only half a Locust Wave actually getting in to do the damage that they were looking for. You kind of were mentioning it. It is
wave, yeah. That's why.
Yeah, it's really, really tough to make it work when your first couple of Nidus Worms gets shut down. When that many get shut down, it's kind of all she wrote already. It is very much so an all-in that sense. So game number 3, Bly really, really needs a big turnaround. He's been throwing out his kind of his left and right hooks here and there, but SKillous is deflecting them masterfully.
Yeah, and it's not like it was difficult to, I think, predict on the side of SKillous that there would be something like Swarm Hosts with Nidus and Queens, right? It seemed like the obvious choice, especially when you see your opponent isn't taking a third. It's got to be that or Muta. And if you spot the gases, which I believe he did with the Oracles as well, it's clearly not going to be Muta. So it's, yeah, it was just great from SKillous. I love the Void Ray. I love the adaptation to choose that map and take that third as is natural as well. Like SKillous is doing all the right things, accounting for, yeah, his opponent basically, right? Like he's saying, I know you are about the mid-game aggression and I'm going to be ready for it.
Yep. Well, we're just going to be waiting on Bly to load into game number 3, but this is going to be sort of a bit of do or die in the series. The loser of this series, I believe, will probably end up playing versus Hearthstone, it looks like, is the most likely situation here. So that will actually be a pretty interesting match as well, especially even if it is even if SKillous ends up just taking a 3-0 over here. That sets up for 2 very fun series of Hearthstone versus Bly and also Rainer versus SKillous. I think both of those are series we can look forward to. So
the roots to SKillous and Rainer, so they know each other very well.
Yeah, that is very, very true. And I do feel like SKillous is no longer just, you know, the up and coming kid that he once was. I really do feel like he is kind of solidified himself in my mind as the 3rd best Protoss player, kind of behind Hero and MaxPax still.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say in Europe, and I was gonna say like, yeah, I think, you know, Showtime can be argued for, but
actually, yeah, sorry.
I mean,
no, you know, you're right. You're right.
I like it. It's bold. It's bold. I like it. I think he is, you know, rising faster than most, and I would say I like it. I'm behind you here.
Yeah, I think I'd have to think about it more to really double down and commit to that, because you know you're totally right about Showtime, but you know what? I could see it. If someone said it, I wouldn't be like you're wrong. I'd be like, yeah, you know what? I think that's a very valid opinion.
Yeah. And the Protoss gap isn't like the Zerg gap. I feel like we could name 5 Protoss that on a given day could be the best, and maybe SKillous would belong to that group. He's a little bit of a beast as of recently.
Really? Okay, so I don't wholly agree with that. I think that there is a very clear-cut top 2, and I think there is a bit of a gap. But yeah, MaxPax and Hero. I think there is a bit of a gap between MaxPax and Hero versus the other Protoss.
I mean, SKillous versus MaxPax earlier in the season was very, very close, and SKillous looked really good against MaxPax too, though. It was a 2-1 in favor of MaxPax, but I feel like it could have gone either way, to be honest. So yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's a massive gap, but
That's fair. You compared it to like the Zerg gap, and in my mind, I'm like, well, I also see, you know, Lambo having really great games versus like a Rainer or Solar and stuff like, and I feel like the Zerg gap is also not that large.
I think that the top 4 Zerg gap is not that large actually. Like it's like, for me, it's like Solar, Dark, Rainer, Serral right now.
Yeah,
would be
fair.
My top 4, and then I think there's a little bit more of a leap. But yeah, it's actually kind of wild. There's a lot of players that are kind of contesting the best players in the world and looking to solidify their names alongside them. So
it's so cool, Cats. We have an active scene with players who are gradually improving and getting better at the game. Imagine that.
Imagine. I mean, especially when it comes to players like Solar, right, who have been around forever, and now they're peaking kind of out of nowhere. It's so beautiful to see.
Yeah, Solar finally picking up that big GSL victory and everything, and really finally kind of coming to fruition after so many years. It's been absolutely great to see. And I would even say similar thing, not quite the same, but similarly feels really good to see SKillous, who has actually been playing for a while now. It's not exactly like he just got into the game, you know, a couple of years ago or something. It's not a trigger or something along those lines. SKillous has been playing for a while, and he's now kind of in the last year or so truly been rising up to the top. So it's been great to see.
Yeah, not nearly as long as Solar, of course. Like his career,
yeah.
Half of what Solar is in StarCraft 2, but yet still, it's good to see improvement from him. SKillous has been one of those players that has a very clear upwards trajectory, and it's easy to see why. It's also easy to see why maybe he hasn't improved as quickly as Trigger. Like stylistically, SKillous is a very aggressive player, a very creative player. He looks to play to his strengths, and he wants to out micro everyone, right? Like, and that's kind of what he's about. Whereas Trigger is a little bit more standard in his approach, like loves his blink stalkers, you know, like just common strong timing compositions, like stuff like that. He's a little bit more methodical, I think. SKillous is a little bit more on the chaotic and outpace you, out micro, I'm better than you type game, and yeah, it's really fun to watch.
Yeah, I do quickly want to just touch upon kind of what's been going on in this game so far, because it has been kind of interesting. We do have another drone dying over there, but both of these players end up killing 3 workers with either the Adept that moved across the map and was able to pick up 3 workers and actually get out alive as well, or the 4 Lings. But I think SKillous is going to be the one that's happier, because he didn't get 1 hatchery blocked and have to do some kind of weird sort of setup where he's taking a very awkward natural expansion over a 3rd base location or something. He didn't have to worry about any of that. And 2, he equalized the damage with the Adept while also getting out, and now has the Oracles moving around, which are both great offensively and defensively against exactly the kind of stuff that Bly has been throwing out. So this, I feel like, it's been a pretty decent opening for SKillous.
Yeah, if we take the names into account, I would tend to agree, but obviously it's Bly choosing not to go for the hatchery block as well, choosing to play this more standard game of sorts. And in that regard, he hasn't done a poor job. He hasn't fallen behind. He did find those probes worth of damage, which I would argue is more rare for the Lynx to do than for the Protoss units to find on the other end. So I think if we cover the names, it's a wash, and maybe even a slight advantage in terms of like early trades for Bly. But if we do see the names, then yeah, this is the sort of position where we know SKillous thrives, and it's a position that's potentially uncomfortable for Bly, because the game is not uncomfortable itself, which is what Bly would want.
Yeah, I think that's entirely fair to say with the early game stuff. How do you feel like that's still true even with the extra Lings and stuff that Bly has made?
Yeah, I mean, he definitely did overmake a little bit of Lings, perhaps, but that's not unwarranted. Like, there could be Adepts across the map, etc. And he didn't make a huge flock. He's getting into his Muta. That's where he begins to turn this game from a normal game into a little bit more of a Bly game. But it's also, it should be expected. Like, we've seen him play this style so many times. If he plays standard up until a certain point, you know that it's gonna get wacky and weird from the unit choices and decisions that he makes in terms of how he uses those units. And a lot of the time, the choice for Bly is clear in the Muta.
Yeah, is Bly actually going to be able to get into his weird and wacky styles, or is SKillous going to be able to put on a bit of pressure that Bly may just not be entirely prepared for? There's 9 Lings on the map, and there's 6 Stalkers and 4 Adepts. There's more gateway units than there are lings or roaches on the map right now. So these oracles also going to be able to add in a bit of the extra DPS. Can the queens mount the defense? It does look like they actually have pretty decent numbers, as long as the reinforcements are coming soon for Bly.
Yeah, the little flank for Bly was, I mean, he got as much value as he could have out of those little numbers of links, but now might be potentially running into a stasis trap. At least was looking for it with those couple of links to try to activate it and then give chase. But upon not being able to find it, instead he's gonna have to be forced to retreat here. The links are a little bit off position. I'm not sure if they were chasing a shade of something or something of the sorts, as now they're gonna get baited into a stasis. Oh no, very nice. But now the second stasis is gonna activate onto a great group of links, and yeah, SKillous looking pretty strong here.
Yep, Stalker's continuing to find free little pickings here and there, but actually Bly did manage to find the resources to invest into not only the 5 initial mutas, but 4 additional after that. So if he's able to somehow mount the defense over here against all these Blink Stalkers while making 9 mutas, Bly could find himself in an okay position, but he still has to make that defense happen.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the tough part right now. Is SKillous has such great multitasking, and again, he thrives on micro. So, finds the warp prism. Now, I'm gonna ignore it for now. Instead, gonna just choose to move into the natural. Bly is trying to do what he can, and I mean, the Roach Ling army kind of thrives if you can create chaos on the other side as well, because on micro, the Stalkers are so much worse against them. But SKillous is paying attention. He already has units in position. He's already pushing in deep here to maybe try to force the units of Bly back, and Bly is gonna have to fly back with his Muta, the last thing that he probably wanted to do in order to try to mount a defense. However, for SKillous, you don't see the Muta on your side of the map. You have to expect that they're nearby. So instead of pushing further into Bly's territory, he now takes anchor in his stasis traps and trusts the warp prism to pull the Mutas out before doing anything else at the front.
Yeah, also important to note that Bly, he's starting to spend some of that bank in the sense that he just built 6 overlords that are going to unsupply block him, but yeah, even just the fact that all those queens were dying earlier, he's down to just 2 queens. He doesn't exactly have a ton of larva injects going on, so he has been a little bit larva starved. He is going to be able to find some decent trades here, like you were saying before. Even as the Stalkers blink back, they are still a little bit vulnerable. Now the Muta's actually adding an extra bit of DPS, and those are not going to have to worry about the stasis traps. So they are able to chase on forward. Oh, those stasis though.
Yeah, massive. Unfortunately for Bly, he ran out of links. It would have been really nice to have some of those units activate the stasis earlier, because this fight was very winnable for Bly, and it was looking great up until those stasis traps. Now SKillous has reinforcements. He already has a little bit of a siege lane of stasis that goes back pretty deep, so he's always going to be kind of, you know, ready to run back to that should he need to. As Bly now re-engages with his Muta, 4 Oracles still on the field, and the Muta are going to turn their attention to those. And yeah, the army is thinning out for Bly here at the front. And like you were saying, without the injects, you can't even choose to make too many links, which would be the ideal situation here for Bly in terms of reinforcing against pure Stalkers.
Yeah, making a lot of roaches is going to get up Tunneling Claw and Burrow, so that could eventually come into effect later on. But I think you're absolutely right. It would be great if he was able to make a lot more lings, not only against the Blink Stalkers, but also just because he went for +2 melee, Cats, and you know, unfortunately he just isn't able to actually keep that many lings out on the map right now to take advantage of that.
Yeah, Tunneling Claws and Burrow here doesn't feel like a decision that you would make. It's just a decision that you have available to use some of your resources because you're floating so much type thing. You know? It's not like he's thinking, oh, Tunneling Claws is the way to bring me back into this game. It's like, it's more like, let me spend it into anything and hope it works out because I don't have larva.
Yeah. Really, really tough. There are a couple of queens out now, but one of the hatcheries goes down, which is certainly not going to be helping the larva, much less the economy. The Mutas are trying to get additional damage done on the other side of the map, but I think that they do mostly just get cleaned up now. And that means that Bly's a big ace in the hole, the Mutas, to try and find some counter damage during all this, is no longer going to be available. And SKillous, well, he's starting to build up that supply a little bit too high for Bly to contend with.
Yeah, I mean, look at the map as well. It's not like SKillous has dropped the ball on any front. It's not like even if Bly nuked a base or 2 right now, he would still be in the driving spot. He has been good at continuing to expand. He has been good at saturating those expansions, 77 workers all day, and continuously making 5 at a time. So yeah, SKillous, I mean, yeah, this game's impossible to lose.
Yeah.
Impossible.
Pretty tough, man. It's, Bly is a lot of fun to watch a lot of the time, but I have to commend any player that just makes a Bly game look this one-sided, because It's a lot harder said than done. Bly is one of those players that really just, he makes players look like they're not playing well because he forces mistakes and throws chaos out. And even some of the best players will just sometimes succumb to the weirdness that is Bly, but SKillous absolutely held strong this series.
Yeah, especially the more organized players, the more methodical players. You were talking about, for example, like someone like Drogo earlier. Like, he's the type of player that really, if he is given time to perfect a strategy, he will do it. I completely agree with that, and that's because he iterates so much, and he wants everything to work a certain way, and then you throw in the Bly wrenches, and all of a sudden your plan falls apart, and you're kind of in this chaos. But SKillous doesn't have any problems just sitting in the chaos and making games weird himself. So, you know, he's also kind of just like the better player, I think, by almost anyone's standards. So he's just gonna be comfortable. He was born and molded by the chaos.
So true. Bly is gonna give it his all, but I think the Zealot reinforcing in the main base may actually be able to just completely seal the deal here, as yeah, losing your lair while also losing the fight at the front may just be a little bit too much even for Bly to try and mount a comeback from. So absolutely well played here by SKillous. He truly did kill it, and by winning this, he's going to have that extra little bit of energy going into the winner's bracket round against Raynor. GG, SKillous 3-0.